What was the primary factor or reason that you decided to be a part and create this movie?
To make this movie, I've been part of the Autism Media channel for, 10 years now, and Tommy and I decided to put together serious, hard-hitting documentaries about the lives lived by families affected by autism. And then in May of 2014, Brian Hooker came to me and said, we've got an insider, a CDC whistleblower, a senior scientist who's telling us that they have committed fraud in the MMR vaccine autism study. They found a very strong link between autism and early MMR, and they've hidden it. They've hidden it, put millions of children in harm's way, and that was an obvious basis for a story. We shot that story over the intervening 18 months, and then now it's appearing in theaters across the world as VAXXED the movie. So I say, let me just break away. It's appearing across America. It's being bought across the world, and it will be appearing across the world very soon. So it is a story of the worst medical and scientific fraud of all time, and it is a must-see. You've got to see this movie, and you've got to get your pediatricians, your family practitioners, everybody you know doesn't care, doesn't think it's their problem, is agnostic. They've got to come and see this, because I promise you that when they come out, they will not be the same person who went in.
And for you, what was your primary takeaway from this whole process of making a movie, from where you started before with this amazing story to where you are now with the finished product? What was your takeaway?
For me, the takeaway here is that the parents' original story about what happened to their child, the child's regression in the face of a vaccine, was absolutely right. And the medical profession failed to pay attention because they were either bored or too frightened or indifferent. So that's the fundamental lesson that medicine needs to relearn. Listen to the patient.
The last question is, so you've had all these audiences come to talk to you after the movie or Q&A sessions. What are some common threads that you're hearing that maybe you didn't hear before, or that just reconfirmed what you've been hearing for the past 15 years?
For the parents, the audience is divided roughly half and half into people who are not affected and those who are affected. Those who are affected, it's the same story I've heard many times over. The most important story comes from those who are not affected and didn't know about this beforehand, who've been brought along by their friends, and they are absolutely shocked. They're shocked that they did not know about this, that they weren't told about it by their doctors, that these vaccines are not safe in the way that the government have been telling us they're safe. Those are the most compelling stories of all, but it changes people's minds. So come along, get your friends to come, absolutely right.
My name's Alicia, and I am a DC local. I grew up here. I was actually adopted from Peru by an American. I'm like not a mom yet. I'm 29. I'm, obviously going to be a future mom. And so, okay, I totally ruined it.
There's an answer to your question right there. We're seeing lots of these.
So I'm new to this topic and was privileged to be invited to the screening by Sally Alcorti, who's up in New York because her daughter here is one of my best friends. And I figured, I've never been to one of these before, and I figured, me having an open mind, why not, just take a look. And so, because I'm extremely new to this topic, obviously a lot of it shocked me and affected me in a very different way. I do have, not unfortunately, because I do have family members who do have autistic kids, and in the workforce, I had interns, and I had an intern who was very autistic, and for me, it was a learning experience trying to communicate with them and trying to learn about it in that way. So I guess I'm kind of curious as to what is the most difficult argument from the opposing side about vaccines causing autism. So like what, I guess for me, it's like what is the other side saying that's rebutting the argument? And
They have one, let me go ahead and get to it. They have one single rebuttal to everything that we're part of.
okay.
And that is Andy Wakefield is the bad guy, don't trust him. They won't talk about science, they won't deal with the whistleblower, they won't talk about any of their studies, they won't talk about what they don't know about vaccines.
Yeah.
They're gonna just keep selling you, you shouldn't be listening because of Andy Wakefield, and that's it. And so,
Okay.
well,
then how do you fight it besides like all these events
This
and
film.
everything? It's literally this
The-
film.
this film explains exactly the lie around Andy Wakefield.
Yeah.
You get from the beginning that you know that you were told that he said vaccines cause autism.
Exactly.
And then you see him saying in those exact meetings, this does not prove a case of autism, we need to do more studying.
Right.
So it falls apart in his own words in the history of what took place. Beyond that, what else can we do? They want us to sit here and spin and talk about this over and over again because they only want you to talk about the fear that they've instilled. And I'll say this, I came from a medical talk show. I've been a medical producer for 6 years on the most medical talk show there is, The Doctors. I left because this story was too important, and when I met this guy and started talking to him, and I started investigating, I realized this entire thing falls apart. So, what else can we do except tell the truth? We've been lied to. And when we went out and one of the things that was shocking for me is the amount of doctors that I went to interview, because I said, Andy, we need some more backup doctors. So we talked to heads of universities, heads of medical universities that said to me, Del, I know that vaccines are causing autism, and I'm not going to say it on camera because I don't want to get Wakefielded. It's sad and it's scary, but it worked. They have terrified every doctor that wants to investigate this or knows the truth from coming out and saying it by destroying one man's career. And that's all they got. It's a one-trick pony, and this movie is unearthing that. Because more and more people walk into this theater and are seeing it all across the country. And every time they've tried to censor it, we get bigger. Every time they've kicked us out of a theater, we've picked up 5 more theaters. And so they're in real trouble, and they don't have a single question we can't answer. So what's the most difficult question? There is none. The difficulty is on their part to explain something they cannot, because they've lied to you.
Why did you decide to be a part of this movie, and why did you decide to create this movie? What was your main motive and incentive?
Well, a lot of people say, wow, it's amazing. You know, these autistic parents come up to me and they say, there's no reason for you to do this. You left your job, you left your career to do this for us. And I say that's not actually true. I have 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, and I don't believe that the government owns my baby, and they don't own my children, and they cannot just penetrate the skin of my child and inject whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. That goes against everything I believe about freedom, everything I believe about democracy. So that's number 1. Number 2, when we have this autism epidemic that is going to destroy our economy, my children are going to grow up around millions of autistic adults. That's what will be the world they live in. This year alone, 100,000 children born will ultimately end up on the autism spectrum. We're building cities of autistic children that are going to be autistic adults. And then when you look at the math and you see that exponentially we're heading to 1 in 2 children being diagnosed with autism by 2032, I got into this for my children. I got into this to try and save the world that they're going to live in. Number 1, so that we don't bankrupt this country. Number 2, so that they don't get filled with a bunch of toxins and poisons they don't need. And I have choice over it. And number 3, so that they live in an environment in a world of healthy children. That's it. Give me one more question. I gotta run.
So what was your primary takeaway from before you started this movie to after you started this movie? And then the other question was going to be, and you can decide which one you want to answer. What's the biggest trend, or what's the possibly shocking things that you hear when you listen to the audiences after Q&As and before and after the movie? Because I know you talked to some people before the movie.
So the most shocking thing, and I think it kind of goes with your second and third question, kind of go together. Once I got involved in this, what I cannot believe is the amount of people it is. There's one thing, you hear numbers, 1 in 45 children autistic. But when you talk to hundreds and thousands of parents that are now coming up to me after every single Q&A we do, I have an anger, I have a rage growing inside of me, thinking about all the doctors I've worked with in my career that say that vaccines are safe and don't listen to those parents and they're just making it up. I want every doctor that questions this, any person, to stand with me every night and meet these parents and hear their stories and realize these are clear thinking, brilliant people that are telling us the truth. And we've covered it up. So the sheer numbers is what's affected me the most.